I'm Tanisha Sharma. I work for News UK, The Times, as a product manager and business analyst. I'll hand over to Luke. Just forgot our introduction slide there, but here we go.
Hi, my name's Luke, and I work for The Times. Been there for about 10 years and appreciate it's a bit of a last-minute schedule change. Joel, my colleague, who's still here in the audience, gave up his spot for me. So good news, he's here, so reach out to him. Bad news is he's positioned close to the door, so he'll be first at the bar. Get your running shoes on and get there quickly. So we're going to bit of backstory, give you a bit of context. I'm always proud to say that The Times is well over 200 years old and was first published in 1785. But we're here in a room that predates that by a good 30 years. So I kind of think we see that maybe when the first edition of The Times was published, they were sitting here reading that very first edition in advance of 200 years ago. So Sunday Times followed shortly after that, because obviously we're two titles. We joined the News UK, News Corp sort of stable of brands in 1981, and have a sort of very strong print heritage. Obviously, since then, the world has changed, and we've obviously made huge strides in our digital offerings. We were one of the first to launch a paywall, and we did that in 2010 at the height and the boom of the iPad launch. We were voted the world's best iPad app. We launched a new radio station in the middle of the pandemic, and we sort of rebranded from Times newspapers to Times Media last year, highlighting a sort of shift in the landscape and that we're not so focused on newspapers, but ultimately we are now moving away from just the written word and thinking about publishing more across different formats. So with that in mind, I was sort of thinking about today and what we're going to talk about, and thought, well, what would a TV series look like if we were going to sit here and talk to you about what we've done on The Times? So again, there we go. What would a Netflix series look like on the subject of? Oh, quickly go back. Publishing tools. And again, if you want a good advert for why AI tools are not going to replace journalists anytime soon, it's because it's throwing it up as Netflix rather than Netflix. So, any publishers in here who have a team of sub-editors like we do, worried about AI replacing their jobs, this is a good case study for it being fine. So, I think we'd all take a good interest in watching this series. And if I was to be asked to sort of what that breakdown could be like, it might go something like this. And obviously there may or may not be some things that you can relate to from any large publishers here or small publishers, but gives you a bit of context for what we've been through. So series one, a large print CMS is deployed. It takes years, it costs tens of millions to do, and it's future-proofing the newsrooms for forevermore. And obviously that's just a crazy idea. But in-house, we built, or this company, we built, obviously, a load of sort of proprietary tech on top of that, powering the iPad and publishing workflows. Following on from that, realizing that these big systems take too long, the focus shifts to rebuilding everything in-house. Again, forgetting sort of open source off the shelf. Let's just start from scratch internally. That takes a huge time. Now, for us, there was a global sort of WordPress alliance forming in New York at HQ, and obviously we're News UK, News Corp, but we doubled down and we're like, no, The Times is very different from every other publisher within News UK and News Corp, and we're very different. And again, the reality is very obviously not the case. So we even started building out a WordPress proof of concept in an effort to prove that it wasn't working. We had to build our own. Now, what ended up happening was all these blocks that we built in this proof of concept, our other titles who were on the sort of WordPress train picked up and used. And we presented them at WordCamp 2019, and people are still using them to this day, and sort of seeing that was sort of really fulfilling, but frustrating at the same time because we weren't using it. So anyway, global pandemic hits, and actually we then reset and realized that these homegrown tools aren't going anywhere fast. And actually we're better off collaborating, almost adopting this open source community that we have that's called Newspress within News UK or within News Corp. So that brings us to where we are now. So the cast of this series looks something like this. Times Media, so our journalists, we have 800 journalists within our two titles. We work closely with News UK Technology, Newspress, which is this global program that comes out of News Corp, BigWP, our WordPress partners who are here today, plus VIP, and DeskNet, who are a small company that build a planning tool, which is integral to our WordPress ecosystem. And I'll touch on that later, or I can chat about it with you out of here. But again, a bit like Matt said, one comment can make a huge difference, and our readers love comments, right? And if they're not happy with something, they tell us, and that's under the, below the line with the comments, with calling up the call center, or worst of all, cancelling their subscriptions. And we work really hard, obviously, to keep growing our business. We're, it's just under 500,000 digital subscriptions. That's going up. Page views on the rise. Our radio's doing really strong. And our digital reach is now 4 times greater than that of print. So if anyone needs convincing that there's a future in digital, these numbers really help tell that story. So next slide. But what's different here from the Times? Within News UK, we have run with WordPress before, but this is slightly different in that, again, we have launched WordPress across all these different titles, but that was end-to-end. It was new CMS, new website, new apps, the whole bang, whole shebang. So we're experienced with that, but Times was different because we've gone headless, and that's one of our, at this scale, it's the sort of first experience we have in that. So the challenge was to rebuild the back end, simplify the tech estate, make sure there's no interruption to service, right, because our readers are important, and crucially keep driving subscriptions. And our heroes in this story are our journalists, right? My customers are first and foremost the journalists on an editorial floor. Secondly, the readers that we reach out. So everything we do as part of this sort of open source news press community, it puts our journalists first, because my job is to inspire them to tell the better stories. And that in turn, it makes it gives a better experience to our customers. So again, it's great to hear this from Matt earlier, right? But the real power of WordPress and Gutenberg is that interface. But there's a whole load of information that exists within our newsroom way before it even hits an editing tool. So what WordPress doesn't do so well is that post list screen. And if you're using it for 2 or 3 articles a day, that's fine, but we're publishing hundreds. And we want to capture as much information as we can as early as we can. And we use a planning tool. And I don't really define it as a planning tool, it's more of a decision-making tool. Because if we can capture as much information at source, present it to those people who need to make those critical decisions around what they're going to commission, it's a decision-making tool, and then we can sort of focus more on how we tell that story, what platforms we go to, and that's what WordPress Gutenberg is really strong at, that giving that user interface for our journalists. So this sort of partnership between DeskNet and WordPress, and obviously the two integrate nicely, is really strong. Yeah, I think we skipped this one. Keep going. Just going to hand you over to Tanisha to talk through some of these examples.
Yeah, so Times TPA. TPA stands for Times Public API, so it's the API that it's interconnected and not just sending the data from WordPress to the end user, so like the website's apps, but it's also connecting the different other tools that we have. As Luke mentioned, we got the DeskNet, the planning tool, the decision-making tool, but not just that, we've got the curation tools, and it all gets sending the data to TPA so that the readers can consume our article content at the end of the day. So what's the benefits of Newspress and how it's being used in the Times newsroom? So we have 62% fewer clicks with using WordPress by the editors, and it's 34% much more faster to create an article in Newspress rather than using the legacy tool that we currently have. It's got a lot of features which is being learned from the old tool that we have been using as well, but in terms of we've enhanced like the image functionality, because image is like the prime feature when you come an article you see, and you want to make sure it's the best that you have when you have the best editors kind of working on pictures as well. It's also integrated with the planning curation tool, so which means it's more flexible. It's not just restricted to article creation, but you can create and you can better plan your article content as well. So editors can then create more inspiring and interactive components. It's easier to create new article formats as well in WordPress, so it's not just the usual general article that you would see on the website. It's also been adapted to the webs and apps, tablets as well in the future, and it has 4 different article templates that the editor can easily select from in Newspress. But our end users, the best user experience they will still be getting without any change that they will notice on the front end, because all the changes are happening in the background in WordPress. And at the front end, they won't realize that we've got a new WordPress tool creating all this. And in the future, it's also going to be used for live news. So there's going to be more article templates, more better storytelling, visual stories that the users can see. We've also built our own metadata tagging functionality in WordPress, which means that it auto kind of reads the article that's been subbed in by the editor, and it auto predicts what kind of tags can be suggested, which can help to uprank the article content in Google search, SEO rankings, and not just on that, but also on the Times website. So again, it helps with content search and discovery. Overall, we've learned from our old tool, but also build a new CMS, which empowers the editors to create the best content they can. And not just that, but make sure that they don't have a lot of new user workflows that they need to adapt to. It's trying to learn from their current workflow and making sure that they can use it and transition to it with all the familiar functions that they're currently using. For example, Notes mode is customized block and functionality feature that we built in Newspress, which allows them to sub articles much more at a quicker pace of time as well. And they can use shortcuts to make sure that they can sub the article much more quickly. And the shortcuts are all the similar ones and familiarized ones that they're currently used to. There's also some kind of key blocks that we've built, for example, related articles, so the ability to editors to quickly search and find any related articles to their content, which they can add, insert into their WordPress, and they can really get a preview of what it will look like when it's published on the front end. We've also built some interactive components, which are all customized by reusing the logic that's being used by the current tool, but also making sure it's much more improved, optimized in terms of performance and speed as well. So it's more than about 10 interactive components, and there's more to come into the Times Newspress. So that's about the Newspress, and I'm just going to hand it over to Luke to talk about the future.
Yeah, so our rollout continues across across the floor. We're always keen to keep benchmarking, right? And that's across against our existing tools, across other brands within News UK, but also across you guys. You know, love to reach out and let's talk and see what you guys are doing, and in turn willing to tell you what we're up to. You know, crucially, delivering more value for our readers. So new templates, new storytelling types. Integrations are key. You know, this whole shift left concept of sort of capturing more earlier and sending that downstream, really making the most of the data and the metadata that sits within this ecosystem. Plans to rebuild the front end, you know, drive the same topics that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about. How do we drive further automation, particularly across print? And sort of investing more in experimentation and really trying to drive that across the newsroom floor. So hopefully we're okay for time. Any questions, or do you prefer to take that to the bar? Take it to the bar.
Did it get
to the bar, but they can definitely come find you guys afterwards. Guys, please.
That's great.